go. Hi, folks. You are watching and listening to a very special edition of Open Bar. I'm your host, Mike Morales, here in sweltering Southern California. The gentleman with the beard is...
I'm Jeff Ernst, Chief Left Brain of Package Group.
and the gentleman in his beautiful library is...
This is Shawn Miller. I would be the right brain of the Package Group.
Now, if you
between the two of us, it's one brain. So
yeah, it's one brain. Yeah. Now, if you folks don't know who Jeff and Shawn are, probably two of the hardest working guys in show business. Okay, I mean in the booze business. Shawn and I have had a couple of experiences together, and I've watched him work a booth and a tasting. He's so good with the audience and with people, and the folks that the brand that you import and work with is G4. Why don't you show the bottle? I think, Jeff, you got a bottle there. Yeah, if you folks are familiar with that, yeah, that's right. Ingeniero Felipe Camarena, that's his baby, and these are the two guys responsible for creating the snowball that G4 is. And I wanted, first of all, I got to ask you, were you guys both in the booze business before we came along and got to meet you? Because we've known it, we've worked together kind of like in the last 5 or 6 years, but you guys have been around for a while. So, but were you always in the booze business?
No, absolutely not. So, Shawn, I don't know if you want to kind of take it, but this was a fortunate accident. So,
yeah, Mike, we call it a happy accident. And I'm amused that you say my library, but I'm in fact standing in my office now. And
okay.
And so this is our world now. This is what my office looks like. Yeah. But yeah, we hadn't been in it for maybe 5 or 10 minutes when we met you for the first time, to be honest. And the whole thing was a complete accident to us, and we just couldn't be more grateful, for the opportunity and where we are now. And I'm sure Jeff and I would say, not only, is this my office, but to me, these are my friends, right? These are, and it's been a heck of a journey for that to be true, right?
Well, it sounds like you guys have had a real concentrated history, like within the last 5 years or so. I mean,
we've been at this for about 6.5 years at this point. So
okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. That's about the same time when we started communicating together. We were doing tours and on the road and things like that. And so what were the backgrounds prior? Jeff, where did you come from before that? Were you always in the booze business? Because you're so comfortable in it.
No, I mean, Shawn and I have pretty similar backgrounds in some ways, in that we were in a variety of industries throughout our careers. We were just business builders, brand builders, marketers, salespeople, and just entrepreneurs at heart. So, I mean, I'd been in everything from technology to sports to senior living to, but a long track record in technology. But it was always, very entrepreneurial. I had, from my own businesses and things like that along the way. I think Shawn used the term maybe, 7 to 10 years ago first, that both of us are somewhat unemployable because we work at a pace that, is yeah. So we're unemployable.
I like that. Isn't that the majority of us?
We work.
We can't
most aren't used to, and we move fast enough that we really wanted to make sure that, when we did this, that we are all, this is something I think both of us only just discovered, not only because of the unique connection we made as the first person we really met in this industry was Felipe Camarena. We got to connect with someone we consider family, and it's just, legendary and such a unique experience to get into this, that it helped us dive in both feet and really build business around this.
Yeah, Shawn, your background is, if I'm not mistaken, you're from the health club business, correct?
Yeah, we still own a health club. Yeah, my wife and I own Flex Fitness Center in Holland, Michigan. We have our kids involved with that now. We've done that for a long time. I've been involved in other, training. The last time I had a job, actually, I worked for Caterpillar. I was a training officer for Caterpillar. So I've always been involved in marketing and training and education, and engaged with consumers and on various things. And Jeff and I have been friends since the 8th grade.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's the reason we're, we have such an ease to connect, and there's really no, for business partners, that's pretty unusual, right? And for us to be able to, I mean, if he's full of shit, I'll tell him he's full of shit, right? And it's no problem, right? Because it's, I've known him for a minute, so we can get away with stuff like that,
I tell you what, Jeff is a smooth operator, man. I've watched
Yeah,
this guy. I have. I watched him work a booth, and you had him lined up like 10 deep, and you just kept going and going and go. This guy's like the Energizer Bunny, folks. This guy here.
And I think the nice thing for us is in this business, it's so much a part of our DNA anymore. It's just telling the story we know. It's not pitching something you don't believe in. It's not marketing or selling something. It's literally telling the story that you know and you've taken so deep into you that it's just reciting life at that point,
Yeah, I think just two thoughts that come to that, Mike. On one hand, when we say how we started in this, right? We started with Felipe. I mean, my first visit to a distillery was Pandillo, right?
Yeah.
But one of the first things Felipe says, well, go see my brother-in-law. Well, who's your brother-in-law? Well, it's Julio Bermejo. He's got this bar in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So I mean, we've Jeff and I, and we're eternally grateful for this. We're well aware of it, and we're grateful. I mean, Felipe, Julio, Guillermo, Eduardo Jr., Sergio. I mean, these are the people that taught us about tequila. So for us to have a very high bar of knowledge was easy, right? And when we talk about building G4, well, all we did was tell this. Felipe is very proud that he's never spent $1 on marketing, right? Very proud of this. But the business doesn't work that way, right? So, but all we've done is tell the story of the Camarena family, and tell the story of the Tahona stone in front of the distillery, and tell the story of, what he does and how he does it and why he does it that way. And we've just told that story over and over and over and over, and
so now it's a myth and a legend.
Yeah, when we created a monster to some degree, but we didn't make anything. It's not like we created some backstory about how we went to Mexico in search of the perfect tequila, because we didn't create any fantasy, right? We were just simply telling the real story of the real people in the real place.
And that's really, I think, the key to how the G4's success is the fact that you really don't have to lie. And if anybody, for those of you who are watching and are familiar with Ingeniero Camarena, Felipe he's such a numbers guy, and he's such a scientist. He's such a mad scientist too. I was fortunate that one show that you folks made happen, where he was there with us at El Cholo in Pasadena. That particular show was probably so much fun. And I remember we were setting up, and Jeff, you were there. We were setting up. It was a warm day in October, Southern California. So I'm walking around. I hadn't put on my dress shirt yet. I'm walking around in a t-shirt, and I start talking to Felipe Camarena, who I've never met. I've known his brother for years. I've known Carlos, and we started talking in Spanish, and I was fascinated by what he was telling me about the numbers, and how he told me back then that Carlos had kind of moved away from El Tesoro, and that his daughter had picked that up, and he was working now on Ocho. And this was like a couple of years before that became public, and just what a fascinating gentleman. And what happened was the one of the employees at El Cholo started letting in the VIPs before it was time. So I'm starting to see this flow of people walking around, and Jeff's like working already. And I'm going, I got to put a shirt on, excuse me. And after that, it was just, it was just beautiful. It was downhill all the way. People were just loving being with him. He was signing bottles, and even after the show, and he couldn't have been more gracious with the public as well, because you can tell he's not, he's still very much a scientist and kind of reserved.
Yeah.
But he, like all of
Absolutely.
us, we all, we all gravitate to genuine respect and appreciation, and he was wonderful. It was one of the better experiences that we've had on the road, and I got to thank you two guys for making that happen, because that was really a big feather in the whole show's cap, frankly.
Well, and he'll gladly sit and talk with a small group or an individual's for hours and hours and hours, and he'll talk about tequila for hours and his family for hours and hours and hours. If you put him in front of that group and like hand him a microphone, that doesn't go so well. But he'll happily talk to just the little groups and little individuals all day long, for sure.
But see, his brother Carlos is completely the opposite. He loves an audience,
sure.
and I've got a few videos of him, holding court in a bar in LA when I was living here previously to now, and he's so, and I've known Carlos for forever, for a long time. He's been part of my tequila journey. So it's really fortunate that the two of you guys got a first rate education. It's like skipping all the grade school stuff and going directly to grad school, because look at his bar. I mean, he's got, if you look at Shawn's bar, you have some of the greatest master distillers, that I can see there. I can pick out Don Felix, which is Don Felix Bañuelos, who is his family was the original makers of Cazadores. I mean, these are legendary families that you've got on your bar.
Well, and of course, just to tie stories together, that of course was business partner with Pedro Camarena, the third, right? In that iteration of the Banuelos's business, right?
Yes.
And we're now bringing Primo to the United States.
And I've been trying to get samples from you guys. There's a few things that I got bones to pick with both of you about things, but yeah, that one. See, and you guys, it seems as if anything that your company brings to market when it comes to tequila and probably other spirits, because you guys don't just represent tequila. I mean, I know you, Jeff, you've been working on whiskeys as well, right?
We've got a very small portfolio as far as that goes. We've got some whiskey, we've got some Spanish gin and a vodka, but really our heart is in agave and these families. And it's, to us, it's as much about the families. I mean, we know the Banuelos family. We've met with all of them and sat down and broke bread with them. And all of the others that are on that wall, these are people to us, not a product.
That's so cool, though, that they've taken you into the fold, into that circle, because not everybody can accomplish that. I mean, I say that's really a good portion of the reason why your company is so well known. I mean, every time I turn around, Jeff or Shawn's introducing a brand new tequila somewhere into the market. One that I want to ask you folks about, and I know that you're no longer part of that. What happened to Lobos? And that was a very interesting rollout onto the market. That's LeBron James's tequila, and it kind of everybody was pitting it against Sincoro, Michael Jordan's tequila, and there was but it was really that particular brand had a really good basis. I mean, it sounded to me, and you and I had discussed that, Jeff, just through messaging, that it was a solid brand with a long history as well. How was that something that just didn't work out for you guys, or what happened?
No, it's not that it didn't work out, but that was a brand that had a trajectory that really our goal was to help them get to a certain point. And, the CEO of that is a good connection of ours. She's on our board of directors of our whiskey company as well.
Oh, okay.
And they really needed at a certain point to have their own dedicated team where, we have a small portfolio of our own product. And that's the direction they needed to go. But, in the end, that's a brand that has the founder, Diego Osorio, his family goes back, several hundred years into making Spanish sweet wines and vermouths, and that's the family behind like Listau, so that's a long history.
Yeah.
And their team, I think, is doing well, and they continue to add celebs and more things to that, and they're good people. It just was a different venture in that regard, as far as the type of things when it comes to that sort of marketing. That's just a different thing versus what we're sort of used to.
So Shawn, tell me about Primo. Tell me what's the backstory on that now. I know it's making some inroads. A lot of the tequila cognoscente, however you want to call them, have been really behind the brand lately. What's the story?
Well, and it's I mentioned Pedro Camarena III a minute ago, and I was at Pandillo about a year and a half ago, and Felipe said, "Next time you come, I will introduce you to my nephew." And I said, "Cool, right?" I truly didn't think, we meet a lot of people, right? And they're all, great, cool. And then the next time when I came, sure enough, there was a fellow in the entryway there of the distillery that I did not know. And I said hello, good morning to him. And he says, hello. He says, "But I am Pedro Camarena VI." And my profound response to that was, "No shit." And he said, "Let me introduce you to my father. This is Pedro Camarena V." And which I again profoundly said, "No shit."
Oh shit. Yeah.
So this is the direct. So the connection to the story that we've all told a million times about Pandillo is the Tahona stone out front, right? Everybody visits, gets their picture with the stone, right?
Right.
This is the famous stone of the original tequila distillery of the Camarena family, right? This is Pedro Camarena, born in 1861, and in having 21 children at that time, and thus begetting, and getting the family was already in the agave business at that point,
right?
Then getting into the tequila business for the first time, and then begetting, three male sons that were three forks of the tree that now are 60% of the tequila industry, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you're talking, Don Augustine, Pedro Camarena, and then Felipe, Don Felipe.
Right. Oh yeah.
Direct sons. And so Alteña and Casa Camarena and
Andina, I think is the other one.
Things, right. So that Pedro Camarena VI or the third, he had passed away at a fairly young age, but in business for Castadores, right, at that time.
Oh, okay.
So he was purchased, he was bought, his widow was bought out of the business at that time. Their direct lineage was cut.
Okay.
And Pedro, the current Pedro, and Felipe had the idea to create a brand to honor that tradition, to honor the original Pedro Camarena.
Oh, and
so
that's why it's called Primo.
They have created, right? So Primo meaning first, Primo meaning best, and Primo, of course, meaning cousin as well.
Cousin.
They are in fact cousins.
Yeah.
So it's there's a lot of entomology to the name.
And I mean, how do you fail with a brand that has instant history, right? I mean, it has instant pedigree.
Yeah.
When we talk about the tequila industry and where it's headed, and how, I don't know about you guys, I'd like to get your perspective on this, but for me, when I see those headlines where they say tequila is going to overtake vodka, it's overtaking whiskey, I'm afraid of that. That to me is not a sustainable goal for the industry. But that's just me. I mean, I see it from another perspective, obviously.
Yeah.
And when I talk about pedigree, I say that if this thing blows up like this, the only brands that will survive are the brands who are agave growers, first and foremost, which the Camarenas all are primarily, that own their own land. Some of the smaller brands will shake out, and the big guns are never gonna, they're never gonna. We all know they're never gonna fail.
Yeah.
So how do you guys feel about those headlines? I mean, obviously they help sales, right? Because that's what you guys are into. That's what we're all into, is how many bottles can we move off the shelf, right? But deep down inside, you guys, both of you, seem like you really care about the industry, and that your exposure to it was, I mean, it's like being kissed by the gods when you're taken in with the Camarena families. It's like the Orendines, or anybody you can think of that has a pedigree. So what do you guys think? What's your perspective on those headlines?
I mean, for us, in the end, we all kind of know, and it all, as I often say with a lot of things, that makes me the left brain. It all comes down to math, right? And we all know what the cost of agave is doing, and we know that isn't going away. And the sheer cost of what it takes to do that versus any sort of grain, corn, whatever, to produce that, as well as the watering down of what a tequila means. I'm glad for tequila's popularity. I'm not glad for the loss of clarity of what tequila truly is. I mean, to me, one of those vectors is things like cristalinos, and things where there's no definition by the CRT of what that is, and a lot of the other elements where it gets into what is actually going into that tequila that people are drinking, and those of us of our particular vintage, we all grew up on what, I'm not picking on the brand, but we all grew up on mixtos in some form,
yeah,
and bad tequila experiences. And now, over the last 20 years, craft tequila has really come, and people understand what a good tequila is and they appreciate it. But now it's almost like the pendulum is swinging back the other way to not understanding what tequila is. And that's where I get concerned, because it physically can't be produced at the prices people want to. I was having a discussion with a popular restaurant the other day that was putting out their well business, and they wanted 100% agave bottles in their well, and they wanted to pay $5 a bottle. Right?
So after you stopped laughing, what happened?
And I maintain professionalism in something like that, but in the end, all of us know that right now, just to produce, just the cost of the agave alone is between $7 and $8 to produce that bottle.
Yeah.
So if you're getting it for $5, it's not tequila. It's just not. And so I really, there are reasons we are passionate about both the land, the people, and the future of it needing to be, truly sustainable in more ways than one. From every facet, it needs to be sustained. The producers do, the people do, the land does. I mean, you right now, you go down to Mexico and you literally see a gold rush going on. Avocado growers going and moving their business from avocados to raising agave to, billion-dollar distilleries and things of that nature. And to what end? And that's where I think, Shawn and I are going to have a long time fighting for that soul of what tequila really means.
Well, yeah, Shawn, give me your perspective on that. Thank you, Jeff, because that opened up my eyes for a couple of things that I haven't looked at. What do you think, Shawn? What's your perspective on this whole thing?
Well, the thing that rung in my brain when you asked the question was you just previously talked about Lobos, right?
Right.
So and that's the thing that the question that I have when we talk about tequila. You can't talk about tequila and not talk about, Kendall Jenner and The Rock and these things, right? And the reality is those, why is tequila overcoming, whiskey and vodka? Well, it's being driven by The Rock and Kendall Jenner and LeBron James and these characters, right? Since
all of The Rock's friends are suspect. as far as
Yeah.
I'm concerned,
Well,
including Marky Mark.
yeah, sure. But that gold rush following the Casamigos acquisition and then all of these celebrities, of course, with their earnest endeavor to go to Mexico and find the perfect tequila, right? But
That's,
but
that's such a trite story. It only worked like the first 2 times, and after that, it's like
it worked once. It was a good
it
one
worked once.
But I think that and we experienced that with Lobos, right? We experienced that. The power of that celebrity and the power of that big marketing budget and the ability to sell, tens of thousands of cases at launch, right, of a brand that did not exist and is a, is rooted in a great story, but is in fact a contract produced, mass produced tequila, right? So I don't know if you can. In my mind, I can't separate, and maybe this is my right brain side, but I can't separate the marketing conversation and the influence of the celebrities from that discussion of what is tequila, what is sustainable tequila, and these things, right? And then, of course, and many friends and that crowd that we hang around with, Mike, wants to talk about additives and these kinds of things all the time. And I recently met by happenstance, everything in my life's a happy accident, I guess, but I recently met a young lady that was an additive salesperson, and she was calling on the distillery that I was at. So she was standing in the lobby. She'd made a cold call on the distillery that I was at, and I'm gonna find out about this, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
What and she's got her little suitcase full of vials of the little things, right?
Yeah.
And her number one selling product was agave flavor. And and we talk
wonder why. Why is it? I have one word for you guys: diffuser. Okay?
Well, it's that combination of diffuser and column still that allows one to produce, 250,000 cases of brand new product. Right. This can't be done at Cascaween. This can't be done at Fortaleza.
No, of course. Yeah. No, I can't. They don't have the capacity for it. They don't want to have that capacity.
Well, I'm sure they'd like to make that much money, but if we're honest, I'm sure they'd be happy to. But
they don't want to sell out either. You know what I mean?
But that's the reality of the additives discussion and what is tequila. It goes deeper than the discussion of why does this smell like cotton candy, right? It goes right. The real quick, why is agave flavor the number one ingredient that she's selling, right?
That's beautiful. Oh, you've heard it here first on Open Bar, folks. Here's a scoop. It's no longer sugar. It's no longer all that other stuff. It's
Make it taste like agave.
It tastes like agave, it smells like agave, and it must be agave, right?
Well, you've created an agave vodka, right?
Right.
And now you've distilled at 140 proof out of a column still, and you've created an agave vodka, and now you've got to make it taste like tequila.
Jeez. And the reason for that, folks, if you're not familiar with what a diffuser is very often, in the old days, and when I say old days, just look at the back of Shawn's bar, okay? In these folks, the primary business for these people are that they're agave growers. So they're very proud of their agave, and they're going to let their agave grow to a certain age to what they consider maturity. And maturity is, there's a word that word is used in the normas, the rules and regulations of tequila production, but it's nebulous because maturity is not numbered. We don't have an age for it. So when somebody says, I only use mature agave, that's really subjective. It depends, I think, on the grower, what they believe, mature agave is, 5, 6, 7 years old, and what a company that makes tequila out of a diffuser thinks is mature. Right now, the rumors are that they're harvesting anywhere from 2 to 4 year old agave. They're not, that plant, and I harp on this over and over again, the plant has not been in the ground long enough to acquire any kind of characteristics. So to your point, Shawn, no wonder she's selling agave flavor, because you know that isn't going to taste like anything. It's just going to taste like, I don't know, fiber. I have no idea. Wood. I have no idea.
Well, it's produced like vodka, right? It's
Yeah.
they're just simply making sugar from the agave,
But it's
and
handcrafted.
then creating as as high of production, high of proof as possible, right?
Yeah. I love Tito's handcrafted, or the Terramana, when the description they have
Small batch. Yes.
Yeah.
Small batch.
Well, yeah, if you count one still, but they're all running at the same time. It's like when Patron says, 60 hands touch this one bottle. Yeah, you got 60 hands in 10 rooms touching that bottle. You're the biggest employer in Atotonilco. You're also the biggest water user in that area. So, there's certain things that you have to look past the marketing. I know, Shawn, this is going to kill you, but there are certain things that, at least now with the portfolio you have, like Jeff says, you don't have to lie to anybody. You just tell the story, and people are gravitating to that. And it must be gratifying to see that really you guys are like the second wave of stuff that, we all kind of grew up on. The original Cazadores was not even a shadow of what it is now. The original Don Julio, not a shadow of what it is now. I can go on and on. Even mixtos now, the old 70-30 mixtos like Tequileño, Viuda de Romero, those were very reputable 70-30s and very cost effective if you were like on a budget, right? But now you have to deep dive into additives and production, things. And the one thing I want to ask you, Shawn, what do you think of the pretty bottles? How do you like that kind of marketing now? I mean, if you look at those bottles behind and Shawn's library, they're simple, they're elegant, they tell a story, but I don't see any ceramics. I mean, I can't see very clearly. You might have one or two, but
No, not many ceramics. I mean, as a marketer, I understand the value of a pretty package, right? And I think you'd be hard to, I mean, Primo is this is a pretty package with a beautiful cap, beautiful brass cap. That's a pretty package. I'd be lying, Mike, if I didn't say it would be easier to sell G4 in an Addictivo bottle. I'd be lying. It would be easier. We'd have grown faster. But it's based on, it's a product driven brand, right? And we made the product known by telling the story. So,
yep.
What about you, Jeff? Same.
Same thing. I mean, there's definitely something for it, because both Shawn and I come from a long marketing background, and to me, marketing is always something that is, how do you win in the conversations you're not involved with, right? So if we're not there to tell the story, if we're not there, someone's tasting it, and someone walks down an aisle, what are they going to pick, right? So I can't argue with package being part of that equation, but for us, it's always, what did we build any of these brands on? It's the quality of what's inside the bottle and the desire for someone to buy another one once they're convinced. There's a whole lot of pretty bottles out there that might get you to buy bottle one, but unless there's a culture that gets you to buy bottle two because you have to be cool, who's coming back?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There's two levels in the in the business, right? The first one, at this point for us, it's pretty easy to put a bottle on the shelf. That was not true 5 years ago. At this point, it's very easy for us to put a bottle on the shelf, but to have someone take it off the shelf is a whole other level. And then to Jeff's point, to have somebody buy it again is a whole other level.
So how do you accomplish that? I mean, those are true challenges for anybody who brings a brand to market. How do you guys handle that challenge?
It's got to start with what's in the bottle. I mean, for us, it's, if it isn't a quality tequila to start with, and that's why we are as selective as we are with the brands that we work with or the brands that we develop or anything else that we put our name to, it's got to be something that we believe first and foremost leads with quality and transparency, that they are additive-free products, that they are the quality they are, because otherwise, and it's hard to say because there's plenty of people who are buying bottle 2, 3, 4 of brands that we wouldn't personally drink. But we know that if we have a dedicated audience, they're not going to fluctuate to go buy something else just because it's on trend. They're going to come back because this is something that is proven to them as a luxury based on value, you know?
Yeah. Well, and we have, as much as we, Mike, as much as we like to think we're sophisticated and we're a real company and and all this stuff, one of the things that we absolutely follow, and have you ever seen a salesman rolling around with their bag full of samples right out on the street?
I used to be one of those guys.
Yeah, so we do that too, right?
I used to sell paper, food, and chemicals. My backstory was when I lived in New Mexico, I came to work for a company that was a paper, food, and chemical distributor. And the year prior to me working with them, they also had a liquor arm of the company. And at that point, the family that owned the whole distributorship sold the liquor arm to Republic National. And so half the sales force went with those guys, but I showed up after only to work for the food business. Had I known, I could have been in the liquor business a year prior, but no. So yeah. I sold everything. I sold Beth Knapp's, cocktail, Mr. and Mrs. Tavern, Mr. and Mrs. Tea. I sold, everything, glassware. Yeah. The only thing I didn't sell was booze. So, but the business works the same. So I'm very familiar with, I used to roll around with the samples and, not in a hot day, but whatever.
Well, congrats to that family for that sale, by the way. But I think the other thing.
Oh, they did really well. Yeah.
I think my story is that as much as we think we're sophisticated, we also have this very simple rule that we as the partners, and it's not just Jeff and I, by the way. We have 2 additional partners now. We have Mark Sorrell in Austin, Texas. An industry veteran of maybe he's not. Maybe he looks younger than he is, but a long, long time. Okay. And then we have Chris Risden, who is now in Idaho, but from the California streets, right? And they know the business much better than we do. But we have a rule that we as partners need to feel proud to take this thing from the bag and share it with you. And if and we don't sell things that we're not proud to take from our bag and share with you. Mm-hmm. So I think if we're following that standard, to Jeff's point, the experience that you're going to have with the product is something that you're going to be willing to buy that again, right? It's going to be of quality and more importantly value more than price, right? So yeah, I mean, I remember the first time somebody, we discussed our extra añejo G4 at $150 or something. I'm like, are you really? Right. But the value that somebody is receiving is such that, I want that on my Christmas list. I want another one. Right.
Yeah. It always amazes me. I remember when I was living in New Mexico and I was much younger and just getting into getting to know what tequila was about, because it wasn't like something that I was born into or anything like that. But I remember my glass ceiling was a $40 bottle of Herradura Blanco. We used to say Blanco Suave, the pre-diffuser. No. And it's like, wow, should I buy? I would agonize over that, because I wasn't making a whole lot of money. So sometimes I would switch from maybe Chinaco's a couple of dollars less, or El Tesoro, the old paper label, because those are the tequilas I grew up on. And now they're treasure bottles. You know what I mean? It's like, had I known then what I know now, I would have bought cases of that and hung on to it, because the only tequilas that are reminiscent of the old days, the old dogs, the OG tequilas, are what you guys are bringing to market now.
Yeah. Well, and Shawn has learned that art of hunting and digging through liquor store basements from Julio, right? So I knew that's what he was going back to his shelf. He was looking for things that he's gone and literally rummaged through, like the Moreno's basement and things like that. For
this is a bad hat
anymore.
Julio is a lovely man, and I love him to death, but he's also a hoarder, and there's no other way to put it.
Well, it has to be, you know, because
man can't walk through his own home. Okay, he's a hoarder. but I started following him around and on travels, and you know, and if we find something on a shelf that's, you know, on a dusty bottom shelf that Julio's excited about, any that he does not buy, I'll buy. And now I find myself with this cabinet full of things, and I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with it, Mike, but here I am.
You know what? Hang on to it. Open it on special occasions, because, like I said, the sad part for me, because I'm not a collector. I like to collect stories. I like to document stories. That's why I love doing these kind of shows, because it allows me to ask some of the questions that maybe you won't get from you know, your Instagrammers and other people, because I've been in the business watching it for the last 23 years, and I've seen brands come and go, and I've enjoyed brands that are now treasure bottles. And like I say, if I knew then what I know now, I you know, because it hurts to know that you think that when you're that young, that tequila will never change. It's always going to be this quality. It's always going to be the families and the traditions. And then turns out, you know, Herradura sells out to Brown Forman, and you know, you have what used to be tried and true is no longer, and it's really sad for me, you know.
That's where I get, you know, when I know these people and I know the story, like this is a bottle of Miko.
I know Miko. We've had it on our tastings.
So so I've collected this bottle now because I you know, Jeff and I are friends with El Viejito. We have a brand that's made of Viejito by Juan Eduardo. Of course, the original El Viejito was sold to Patron.
Right.
And as I've learned the story, well, the man who the guy who I was actually involved in the creation of Patron originally, he left and started Miko. Yeah. Which was made by El Viejito. And I'm like, well, then I must have one of these, right? And it to me, it just sort of it's like a remnant of the story, right? So
see, and that's why I call it a library. It's not just a bar, and of course for Shawn, it's his office. You know, those are his friends. Funny you should mention El Viejito. I just right before he came on, I got an email. I'm being invited to El Viejito. I'm not sure. I'll have to reread that email. I was kind of shocked because, you know, in this business, everybody wants to bring you to their distillery, but they never want to pay for it. So, you know, we'll see.
No, it's, you know, and that's another good family that we're privileged to call friends. And, you know, here maybe, I don't know, what's it been, Shawn, 2 months since the 85th anniversary celebration?
Yes. July.
Yeah, so it was mid-July.
Yes, so I had heard that.
You know, and it was, for all the experiences we talk about, this was one that was truly sort of humbling and honoring. Is that, you know, Shawn and I went down for the 85th anniversary celebration, and literally you looked around the room and there's, you know, 150 or so friends, family, employees, business relations, but we're the only two gringos in the whole place.
Wow.
And we were deliberately the only two that were invited there because of our relationship. And I mean, that's still, to me, anytime I tell that story, it's like, that was just a striking moment of, these are, you know, this is family to us. This is what these people represent. And we've been, you know, very proud in making the El Bandito brand that we do with them, in doing a tequila the right way, that is additive free, that does have a lot of the other sizzle factor, but we know what's in the bottle is you know, an incredible tequila.
And by rights also, that is, we could consider that a celebrity brand, correct?
Absolutely. You know, I mean, Chris Chelios is one of the top 100, you know, NHL players of all time.
Yeah.
You know, Jim Bob was an NFL player, but in the end, you know, we're doing give back projects from day one. We've got a woman master distiller in Carina Rojo there that does exceptional work, and it's a traditionally made tequila that we had to come in and get audited to be additive free, and we're proud of everything that goes inside that bottle. So absolutely, we feel, compared to a lot of the other tequilas we talk about, that's still done the right way.
Let me ask you about that additive free initiative campaign. How important is that for you guys as far as a marketing tool?
I think it becomes, I wouldn't call it a marketing tool, in my opinion. It becomes an educational tool. Because if you actually label something as additive free, at a certain point, people have to ask, well, what do you mean? Why? Right? And that it has a longer tail in that marketing plan than you think, because I don't necessarily want to sell against that, one-on-one, but I want people to understand that this is what matters in doing so. So to me, it's definitely getting people, and it's a conversation starter as much as it is anything else. That if someone doesn't have that on their brand, well, what did they do to not? And there's been so much in transparency and food labeling. This is a conversation that still needs to happen.
Well, and we know what the labeling is all about, because that, for any liquor to come into the United States, it's got to go through the TTB to receive their labeling and their cola, and they have to, there are certain regulations that they have to be met in order for you, in order to get a label and a bottle into the U.S. And we all know that's a U.S. government, overworked and underpaid, department. But the transparency in the U.S. versus transparency in Mexico, those are two different things, because
very different things.
Yeah, because what goes on in the tequila industry, they have their own normas, their own rules and regulations. That's what the normas are called, and they allow for things like additives. They have to be a certain amount, which is also nebulous. And they have to be additives that are not dangerous to human consumption, even though some people feel that they are sensitive or oversensitive to some of the sweeteners and whatever else that they think is in sometimes it's a placebo effect sometimes. So that, how do you, do you ever see that, that industry has always been holding their secrets close to the vest. It's just the way they do business, I think. In general, maybe not the companies that you're doing business with now, the distilleries, but in general, how do you what they consider transparency and what really is transparency are two different things.
Oh, and I've had conversation with some of these legacy families where they wonder why we feel the need to do that, because they're following the regulations and there are no additives in their mind, but they're adding what they're allowed to. And that is just a difference in doing so. It is something that is different on one side of the border, not the way we do it. I don't know what the real answer should or shouldn't be. But if you can't recognize what tequila is, and it just becomes a variant of it, or it becomes, essentially a flavored vodka version of tequila, to me, it should be denoted as flavor, right? If you bring something in that is a vodka in that way, and that has to go into your recipe, it's going to be denoted on your label. But we don't have to do that in tequila.
Yeah, that's a point. Good point.
One thing that comes to mind, Mike, if I can, if I'm allowed to mention mezcal in this discussion, right? Yes. This is we import Palomo, which is a producer-owned brand of Carlos Blas, right? From Mazatlan. But I think, the thing that comes to mind with your question, I feel like the mezcal producers or the mezcal brand creators in a lot of reality, right? Are kind of leading an effort in agave spirits to have really comprehensive labeling.
Yes.
Right. And this was made on Tuesday and a full moon, and Carlos was running the still, and we had, we found we found this particular agave on the north side of the hill, and and you're seeing these extensive labeling coming from mezcal. And I've started to see that leak into some of the new brands of tequila. Right.
You're right.
It's possible there may be a little odd end around to where, that culturally might impact tequila labeling at some point. maybe.
Well, there are some labels of commercial tequilas that are kind of emulating that. You know, again, I go back to Terramana. You look at it and it says, you know, small batch, and this is how we make it. They, you know, they show you the little still or whatever. And for those of us who've been in this business for a while, we look at that and go, that's just copy and paste. And you know, yeah, the transparency only goes so far, right? Versus what Mezcal has been doing. You know, I know the labels you're talking about, like Vago. You flip that paper label back, and it tells you everything you need to know about it. You know, even the type of wood that was used. Yeah, you know,
absolutely,
wood or whatever. You know, and I think that we're going to start. I think we're already seeing it, a migration to other agave spirits from people who are maybe sick and tired of getting the cookie cutter mainstream, you know, commercial celebrity, whatever you want to call
it. And I think that's where, you know, the future may be a lot of growth in the destilado category, where they're going to avoid the CRT, they're going to avoid some of those things, but they're going to tell a story of what it really is with more transparency, right?
Yeah. Right now, a brand of that comes to mind when we talk about other destilados. We were very fortunate enough to have a sipping off the cuff of the Dos Volcanes brand, which is technically a Mexican agave spirit. It is 3 miles outside the denomination of origins where they grow this blue agave in Colima, right at the foot of the volcano. If you two guys can get samples of Dos Volcanes, the brand owner's name is Craig Reynolds. Craig is also spearheading a California agave spirit initiative. They have a council now where there are places in the Central Valley of California that are growing blue agave, distilling it, using small distillers the old-fashioned way, pit roasting it like a mezcal, you know, but not to a big commercial, not in big commercial way. But I think the bottom line is that this particular council is beginning to, the bigger picture for California is that, you know, like a lot of states, we're in a drought, okay? And agave, by and large, any kind of agave doesn't require a lot of water. So, you know, the alcohol business is kind of a secondary, even a tertiary industry when you're looking at biofuel, because to me, that's what's happening in Brazil. That's what's happening in other countries where they're growing different types of agave that are more fibrous. But I will say that agave spirit from Colima, if you have not tried it,
I haven't.
You gotta find. You can order it from Old Town. All of us do business with Old Town Tequila, and it comes in you can get it in a 3-pack of 375s, which is enough. And when you taste that juice, you go, that's what I remember. It's gamey, it's delicious. He's got a Repo and an Añejo as well. You know, it should be more popular, but he's not. You know, he's kind of like cut in the same cloth as you guys. You know, you want to mass produce it. This is a rare gem. You know, he's using literal aged agave, and on the back, when we could talk about transparency, when you read the back of his label, he doesn't hide anything. He even tells you what distillery they borrowed to distill this, because they have to ask permission, you know, in order to distill it, because it's agave outside the denomination of origin, right? 3 miles outside the denomination of origin. Colima is considered, in some academic circles, it's considered the cradle of true distillation pre-colonialism.
Oh, really?
Okay, yeah. There was a study that was done that turned out inconclusive, because there is a taberna, there is a old distillery there, the ancient ruins, and they had the University of Guadalajara went there and did some studies and tried to, you know, age certain relics that they found there, and they said it was inconclusive. And I think, to me, that was a political thing, because as we know, the people that own the history of tequila are also the ones that own the history of distillation. And if that is ever debunked after 100 and some odd years, then the family that owns that original paperwork from the King of Spain, it's not worth the parchment it's written on, right?
Sure.
So that they'll never be it will never be embraced into the denomination of origin. At least I don't see that happening. But maybe with the stress on the blue agave going on right now, maybe the only answer is to allow other states that grow blue agave to be to be allowed to come into the denomination of origin. Do you guys ever see that happening? I mean, I can name 3 states right now that should be in there and aren't.
Yeah, I mean, that's a political argument on such a higher level that, to me, it makes perfect sense. If something is able to grow there, but that's also comes down to protecting tequila as a spirit itself. Is if all of a sudden you lose that domain, you're further diluting the definition even farther. So I jump on both sides of that rope.
That's the key of this, of the discussion in reality, is what is the CRT, what is CRM? And of course, both of those just in the last 2 years have been challenged in court and they've lost. So there's now a competitive CRM, and there's now, I believe, 5 there's 5 CRMs and 2 CRTs. So the opportunity, to expand what is or is not included, I think lies in that. But that's a level of Mexican politics that I'm not that well versed in. So
it's more than what they pay us for. But it is something to look at, because, like I said, to me, the danger is I don't think pushing that agave envelope is a good idea. But that's, again, and that's just something I bring up every once in a while. It's just one of my concerns.
It's certainly fun to drink and talk about it, though. I mean, I'm all about that.
Well, that's what this whole show is about. That's why it's called Open Bar. So.
I mean, to us, those are the experiences that it's right. I mean, Shawn, now when he goes on vacation, you'll find him wandering somewhere, finding off-road tabernas somewhere, and raicilla coming out of a small bucket and whatever. And those are the types of experiences that truly should be enjoyed. But that doesn't mean you should change the definition of what a spirit should be in order to protect its spirit.
Yeah. So, are there any plans for you guys to bring in? That's your first mezcal, correct, Shawn? Is that the first one you brought in?
We've dabbled in a couple of mezcals in the past. This is our first true commitment to mezcal. Okay. We've partnered with Carlos. This is his own brand, and we intend to. What's a great marketing term is disruptive, right? We intend to be a little bit disruptive in the mezcal business with this brand.
Oh, cool. What are your other plans? I mean, are you going to expand into more agave spirits as both of you gain a little bit more of experience? I mean, are we looking at, Sotol, Raicilla, things like that? Are you looking at anything like that?
I mean, I don't know. Jeff's going to talk. I mean, we have dabbled in Raicilla. We've explored Raicilla. I don't know that the market is ready for Raicilla, and of course, Raicilla doesn't know what Raicilla is, which is an issue there of real fact, right?
Yeah.
You start talking about denominations and CRMs. Raicilla doesn't know what Raicilla is, and that's an issue. I think our journey and Jeff's, we're not exactly the same brain. I think our journey is in this, with G4, with Primo, with Palomo. It's the family-owned brand who doesn't participate in marketing. It doesn't understand the U.S. market, and in partnering with them in such a way that we're able to bring that here. And of course, standing on the shoulders of Bob Denton and these people that came along before us and have done this job, you know, we're able to do this today. And I think there are other brands like that. And those might include destillados, they might include racias, they might include sotales. I don't know. But that model, I think, is our spot.
So yeah, well, you know, that makes sense. You may as well stay in the sweet spot that you're, you know, that you're more accustomed to at this point. But you know, obviously, growth is something that, I mean, where do you guys see each other in 5 years? You know, where do you see the company?
We talk about these things internally a lot, but I mean, in the end, you know, our soul is in all things agave. We want to continue to grow our business, but we want to do it in a way that does, you know, honor these families who are producers, that, you know, continues to elevate and escalate them as into the prominence that they belong in. But eventually somewhere we'll grow the business enough where, you know, we also appreciate as much time as we do down in Mexico. You know, where do we see ourselves in 5 years? I'd love to say that you know, we don't have to be recognized occasionally as the hardest working people in the business. I'd like to do it from, you know, less of a perch of that, you know, still work hard, but, you know, maybe it's a laptop somewhere in Mexico a little bit more often. So,
yeah, because you're everywhere, man. I think you rack up more miles than some of the people that I know. And the last thing I want to touch on, have you guys had any supply chain issues? I mean, you know,
sure.
I mean, everybody has. I'm just wondering,
Sure.
I don't hear it from you guys, you know, because all of a sudden you got this nice bottle of Primo, and I'm going, wait, everybody's having a, you know, I just got an email yesterday of somebody who, you know, supply chain problems. He was gonna send us his juice 2 months ago, and it didn't happen. And it's okay, because I understand how that works, but how's it affected you guys?
Oh, I mean, G4 is probably the biggest hallmark of that, in that, you know, we went through very explosive growth in the pandemic, just like a lot of other craft brands did. We were fortunate, I guess is the word to use, one way or the other, but we were fortunate early on that we kind of identified where the trends were going to go and shifted a lot to the on-premise world when the pandemic hit. But we, you know, with that growth, sold through, especially in aged, you know, expressions, several years in a very short period of time. And obviously you can't fake age.
No.
And so for us now, you know, there's supply chain to us meant more than just glass and paper, because, you know, all of our distillery partners and distillery friends went through that. You know, Pendio did, El Vito did, everyone went through those things where, you know, you'd go down and visit a distillery and there'd be half a truckload that was missing labels, or half of them where they couldn't find corks or something to that effect. But, you know, in the end, add to that you can't fake age, and you have to hold to your standards of the product. So, you know, we know what we could sell for certain brands in the US right now, and we do our best to maintain our relationships. But, you know, Shawn and I right now, when we see a truckload of G4 come in a month and a half ago, I'd said, well, okay, here's where it's going to go, and the orders are in, and it comes in and it goes out. And then we wait for the next one.
Oh, wow.
And it's a fortunate thing that we've built the brand in the way we have, that there is that ongoing demand. But we definitely need to be in a position at some point where people want to get the product. You know, if they want to find a bottle of Añejo, a bottle of G4 Añejo would be a treasured thing today, because there hasn't been one on the shelf all year, you know, so.
Wow. Well, you know, I used to work for a guy he would say stuff like, well, that's a big league problem, you know, so welcome to the big leagues, guys. Anything else you want to say to the audience before we sign off? I mean, if there was one thing, a couple of things you want to say because I know, Jeff, you do a lot of your own tastings. I mean, you don't just go see clients, but I've seen you with, you know, like you said, the general public. And Shawn, I haven't seen enough of you out there, but that's probably because you're too busy running stuff in the office. But you know, but I'm sure both of you have. I mean, you know, you walk into a regular liquor store and you know, what do you want to tell people? What do you want them to know about the brands that you carry, or G4 in general? Let's just go with that. Let's just stay there.
You know, I'm. Those are words that are a little bit tough to come by, but I'll say it was one of those things. The last time I was at Pendio, and Felipe was exclaiming to me that G4 was my baby, and he was indicating this to me, and I had no idea what to say in something like that, right? You know, this is something Felipe and his sons created, and Felipe was saying this to his son, and it's like, well, I mean, it feels good to be recognized that you put your heart and soul in something, and Shawn has done the same. And these relationships and these people, and I guess if there's anything I'm going to say, it's something we've reiterated all along. Tequila is about soul, passion, and the people who make it. It's not about a fancy bottle, right?
Right.
And if there's anything I can leave with, is if people would pay attention to that, their tequila experiences would be far better for them. So.
Yes, agreed. What about you, Shawn?
Well, you know, I don't know that I have anything profound to say. And, you know, Jeff has the philosophy degree, not me, but I think, yeah,
he looks like Aristotle, doesn't he?
Aristotle probably had more hair, but yeah.
Who knows? He had a ponytail.
In this context, I hope it always say this, that we, you know, I know that we worked really hard, and I know that we, you know, you say you guys built G4. I know that that's true, but I also have no ego about that, and absolutely nothing but gratitude. And the opportunity that we absolutely back assward fell into, you know, to work with G4, and then to know these people, it's literally changed our lives, and you know, we're so grateful. And it's just, you know, so we work hard to do the best that we can for them, and we really mean so. And you know, we make a little money along the way, and that's cool, right? But
yeah,
but it's just absolute, just overcome with gratitude. And when we have the opportunity like this to, you know, to talk about what have you guys done for the last 5 years, it's kind of a weird opportunity, right?
Yeah.
But the thought that I started with is the thought that I lead with, is that these are our friends, and these are just awesome people. And you know, and I hope, you know, I hope, you know, honestly, I kind of hope that I have two son-in-laws involved in our business now, and I hope my grandkids and Alan Camarena's grandkids are sitting together someday, you know, drinking a bottle of Coke and a bottle of tequila, right? I think, and that's that. I just am so grateful for that.
I love that, you know, because that's what it is. It's about keeping that tradition alive, you know, and that method, that way of making tequila, because obviously the Camarenas have a way of having done their business forever, right? I mean, they settled that area, the whole family did. So, and Jeff, when someone hands you their baby, I'm getting this from Shawn too. When somebody hands you their project that they feel so responsible for, all of a sudden you are handed the responsibility of holding that baby and treating it well, so that it flourishes, it grows up to be its potential, correct?
Oh, absolutely. There is a weight, and you damn well better take good care of it. And that's what it really comes down to, is this is something that crosses all lines of blood, communication, family, friends, whatever you want to say it. You know, it's, you know, I keep harkening back to the word spirit. It's their spirit in that bottle, right?
Yeah.
So it is what matters to us, and why we want to succeed, and why we work as hard as we do for these people, is because, you know, it's familia to us, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's a big responsibility. I can see that, especially with a family of pedigree. Gentlemen, we have come to the end of Open Bar. I so appreciate your time, and for giving me for giving our audience the opportunity to listen to you guys. First and foremost, folks, you've been watching and listening to Sipping, Open Bar, but Sipping G4 is Jeff, Ernst, and Shawn Miller, both of G4 and their marketing company. But if you have not had G4, if you've heard all kinds of buzz about it and whatever, there's a lot of newbies. I lurk on a lot of social media platforms, you name it, Facebook, Reddit. I'm kind of there to watch everything. And I know there's always somebody new coming online going, so what do you got? They show a picture of G4. What do you think of this? And they crowdsource an opinion, right? Here's your opinion. Go get it. You're not going to feel sorry about it, because this is coming. It's pedigree. It's old school tequila with their modern spin on it, and these two, the two guys who are escorting it, guiding it in the right direction. Shawn, thank you so much for taking us into your office.
Sure. Sure.
I so appreciate the time you guys have given us here on Open Bar. Folks, you've been watching and listening to Open Bar on all of our channels and networks. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit the notification bell, subscribe, give us a like, because that helps with the algorithm. Gentlemen, we got to do this again, only maybe in person, like
Thank you.
Padilla or Viejito or someplace like that.
Well, if you don't have one of these yet, we'll have to have a sip with one of those next.
Absolutely. I don't have. Well, there's a few of those that I'm still trying to get a bottle of Primo for somebody.
Okay.
for our sipping off the cuff, and also your mezcal. I would love to.
We'll make sure we take care of that.
Yeah,
this was Shawn and my private barrel for our birthday last year.
Oh my God!
We'll have to share one of those bottles with you.
Hey, probably sooner than later. I would hope that now that we're kind of coming out of pandemic, we can do more and more shows. It hasn't stopped Jeff at all. I mean,
No, I'll be out there soon.
Yeah, but when you are, let me know. In the meantime, folks, thanks again for watching and listening. I so appreciate it. You've been watching and listening to Open Bar. I'm Mike Morales here in Southern California. Jeff Ernst out there somewhere in somebody's bar. and Shawn in his office. Thanks, guys. I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you, folks. Sip wisely.
Thank you.